Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first video where I try to explain my idea for a sports ball game. I promise we will come up with a better title at some point. I just don't know when that's going to be. Let's try and get a game working first. So the sports ball game is meant to be a board game, basically. A game that you can play. Board game, kind of like Blood Bowl. There's some other sports games. One with sharks. I kind of forget what it's called. But that kind of idea, that kind of tactical sports board game that you can play. There is another reason that I'm designing it, which is to leads into Cakeverse Adventures, which is part of the kind of wider Cakeverse Reborn stuff. I had hoped to do a video about Cakeverse Reborn before I did this one. But this is what I'm working on right now, and this is the video I'm recording, and I'm probably just going to put it up fairly soon. Just get something up on the channel, get the ball rolling. If you head over to Patreon, there is a post, and I'll try to link it below. I say try. It's easy to do. I know how to do it. I will likely forget, but hopefully I will link it below, of what I've called basic game statements. And what I want to do in this video is kind of go through that basic game statement and explain a little bit more. One, so people kind of know what it is I'm aiming for, and two, as kind of like reminder for me, right? So I can go back to this if I ever need to work out what it is that I was trying to achieve at any given time. So if you want to go and read the basic game statements, they're over on Patreon. But I'm going to read most of them out. Anyway, I may skip a few. I'll probably go through them, but I may not go into any detail or depth on all of them. So we're set up in Tailspire at the moment. That's what you're seeing on the screen, apart from my lovely face. Just to kind of show that the stadiums are kind of 3D. I did not set up the basement on this well, or was I going to just move the ball? The basement on this one very well, but it is there. I kind of concentrated more on the kind of the field, as we call it, and then kind of the kind of extra terrain you can have. I've already jumped ahead of my basic game statements. Let's just stick to the basic game statements. Okay, so statement number one, there are two teams. I'm going to call them red and blue. You can see that I kind of already started a red team down here. They're based on an angel team, and they are kind of the first team that I'm working on kind of like full rule sets for at the moment. And again, this all kind of leads into Cakeverse Adventures and Cakeverse Reborn, but you know, it's all a big mess. That's the whole point of Cakeverse Reborn. Is it's all a big mess. It all kind of joins up somehow and at some point. Each team has a custom stadium. The stadiums become important. And again, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. So I've said that a game is two matches, right? One would be played at the red player stadium and one would be played at the blue player stadium. And this is why each team has a home stadium. And the reason I want to do this is I do want there to be tactics involved, right? So you are going to design your team, right? You would then design your stadium to take advantage of the strengths of your team, okay? So what I mean by that, so if you look at this very basic stadium that I put together here, right? I have designed a team based around angels, and I have based that team around the idea that they can jump/fly fairly high, right? Whereas if you're playing against a team that couldn't do that, getting to the goal, which is this bird's nest looking thing here, that is the goal on this map. You have to either try and lob it over the walls or get through these doors, right? Now, for this example, I have not put a roof on top of the goal. I think you probably would, but again, there are certain rules on stadiums. Even though you can make it so it takes advantage of your mobility, you can't design the stadium such a way that, say, your whole strength is flight. You then couldn't make it that the team has to be able to fly in order to score, right? Because that means just one team can't do anything for an entire game, and that is not fun. So there always has to be a way for both teams to score, but it should always try to lean to your advantage, right? And there are many ways that you can do that, or hopefully we'll be able to do that as we kind of go through the rules of stadium builds. But yeah, that's kind of one of the things that I know a lot of people I say a lot of people, I've talked to about 5 people about this, and they all seem to question this. Do you really want to have players building their own stadium? And I think, yes, the rules on how stadiums are built are going to have to be, I mean, I want them to be fairly easy and fairly liberal to apply. And the basics are going to be every stadium is going to have 3 levels. The green area we would call the field, I guess. It doesn't have to be green, but, you know, the field, the kind of main playing area. You would then have the underneath. The underneath is designed to be fully blocked up, right? But then you can, if you want, add tunnels and routes underneath, right? So you may want to say you could connect these 2 towers together underground, right? So you'd put a little passageway underground. The other reason for the underneath is for other teams to be able to kind of go in there and change the structure. So is this going to be a whole video about stadiums? That's not what I wanted, but honestly, stadiums is what I'm thinking about at the moment. And like I say, it's where people question the logic. And I guess I'm kind of questioning the logic myself as to whether stadiums are a good idea or not. Or like there'd have to be stadiums, but, you know, should they be designed, you know, by me, and then you play on the certain stadiums, or do you want to give each player the ability to make their own stadium? Now, again, the idea behind this game is that you would very much play it in a league, right? So it wouldn't just be your team versus the other team. You're playing for points. You're playing for the league. And I think from that point of view, having home and away, well, basically it's always home stadiums, right? You have your home stadium. I think having those, and then you could then say, if you're doing tournaments or when you get to the final, you may want to build specific final stadiums, which neither player has had any input into. But the other reason for the stadium, and again, this comes down to adding a level of tactics to the game, right? So I don't believe. This is going to be a video all about stadiums. I can't make this a video all about stadiums. That's jumping the gun. I want to do a different video really going into stadiums. But yeah, I am really toying around with the idea of stadiums. I'm still very much of the idea that being able to design your own stadium with rules so you can't be a complete dick about it. And part of building the stadium would be, there would be a certain amount of, you know, whether it's money, points, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Some kind of currency that you can spend on your stadium to put things that you want to put, right? So obviously we would have to say a stadium has to have some basics, right? It's going to have a 30 by 30 grid, if that's what I stick to. It's got to have an underground. It's going to be blocked. It's got to have a goal, right? So a basic stadium would just be the green, the bird's nest, and nothing else. And you would play your little hearts out trying to score goals in that, right? Being then being able to have some points at the start of the league to build your stadium up, to play towards your strengths, right? To try and guard the goal as much as possible. There is only one goal. There's not a goal per team. There is only one goal, and you're all trying to score in the same goal, right? And there's a lot that goes into that. So trying to defend the goal from the opposing team while also making sure that it's also kind of easy to score in the goal. Because again, one of the key aspects of this game that I want to put forward, which we'll get to when we get to the scoring system, is going on the offensive and scoring goals is the best thing to be doing, right? One of the things I didn't like about Blood Bowl, and honestly I don't like about real sports, is you score a goal, you get ahead, you go turtle mode, you go full defensive, right? That's not something that I want this game to really do. Yes, you could do that and you could get the win, but because of the way scoring works, and we haven't gone into scoring yet, so you don't know, but I do. Because of the way scoring works, every goal is worth a point and a win is worth 3, but you add those together, right? So if you score the first goal, go full turtle mode and try and hold the ball to yourself, which shouldn't be an easy thing. And again, we'll get into that as we go. You're only going to come out with 4 points, right? But the next two teams who play, they may have all, the winning team may have scored 9 goals and the losing team may have scored 5, right? So although you're going to come at, no, hang on. So if you scored a goal, if you scored a goal and 1, you'd have 4 points. If you score 5 goals and lose, you've got 6 points, right? So in the league, you're still very much ahead. So the idea that, I want, winning should be important. And going for the win, but I want the idea and the kind of ethos of the game to always be on the attack. You always want to try and score, right? Scoring does not end a round. Okay, let's start going through this list in a fashion that might make more sense. I'm jumping all over the place. This has been a terrible introduction video to this idea, but there you go. So again, each team will have a stadium. We've covered that briefly, and there'll be a much longer video on that. Each team would then have 5 members on the field. Now, when I was playing around with this iteration, I had 3. Somewhere between 3 and 5, some of you might say, well, that's going to be 4. Somewhere between 3 and 5, I think is going to be the ideal number. And the reason for that is I want a match to last around an hour from start to finish. Probably not setup time, probably going to need, 10, 15 minutes setup time on top of that. But, sit down play, I want to be about an hour long. And I think that's a reasonable time. Possibly even try and trim that down to about 45 minutes. Because again, although I do want there to be tactics, and I do want people to, try and come up with plays and set pieces that you're going to try and do with your team, I do want a lot of it to be reactionary. You're playing the game, you're reacting to what is happening on the board, and I kind of want that to be, and I don't want it to be a 3-hour slog per time, right? And I think around an hour is kind of the perfect time, play time to aim for this kind of thing. Team members and stadiums are designed by the player. So again, your team is going to be designed by you. Now on the notes, I've put that you'll have 5 on the field, but you're going to have a roster of 20. That's probably going to be cut down to 10. And there's a reason for that. I was imagining this, and I was picturing this as being a game that you use a D20 to roll for everything. I think I may be bringing that back to a D10. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference, other than obviously trying to decide what's a good roll and what's a bad roll. Does become different, and one of the other key things is the react system is probably going to be based on D6. Again, none of these decisions are final. You have no idea what the react system is. We're getting there. A game is 2 matches, as I've already stated. So you would play on your stadium and then you would play on your opponent's stadium. Now the game idea is purely based on the league, right? And you would not expect to play both matches, i.e. both sides of that game, at the same time. But what I'm trying to say is, if you are in a league, the same teams will play each other twice, once at home, once away, to get the points up, and then you will go to some kind of knockout stage. If that's how you want the league to go, there does not need to be a knockout stage. You could play it straight away from a knockout stage and just play one match, winner takes all kind of thing. But I think if you do the winner takes all knockout thing, people are going to take it slower. And again, maybe that is a way that people, okay, I don't want to go goal, 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 goal. I want it to be quite slow and defensive. Then okay, so maybe you do the kind of winner take all stage. Now, I would think if you're just playing it between 2 friends, you probably are just going to do a match, right? But again, I would hope you would kind of stick to the thing of trying to score as many goals, and you may just use, a pre-designed stadium. Just design your team, but then just play on one of the Cakeverse Reborn approved stadiums. It wouldn't be a Cakeverse Reborn stadium. It's going to be whatever the name of the SportsBall is plus league. Because yes, there is meant to be some kind of very corrupt kind of parallel to like a FIFA type organization who's at the head of all this, but that's for Cakeverse Reborn. Nothing to do with the gameplay, purely to do with the story generating power, which is the other reason why I'm designing this. But anyway, let's move on. A match is 6 rounds. Okay. And that is the match. So you would play that match on your home team, and then you would go to the away team, and you would play again another 6 rounds, and then that would be a game. Now that I'm kind of sitting here talking to myself, describing this game thing, I don't think it's necessary. I think you have to play the home and away, so I kind of get that. I think even if you're doing a knockout stage, I think you'd want to do a home and away, honestly. I think the stadium designs and designing your stadium and designing it for how you want it to work for your team, and knowing the secrets of your stadium where the opponent wouldn't, I think is kind of going to be one of the key tactical aspects of the game. So I think it is important, but I can also see how it could get confusing, and how I may want to get rid of that before we ever get to actually playing this. I don't know. Like I say, this is all very much up in the air and hypothetical. A round is taken in turns between teams. Okay, so there is no character order, if you like, but there would be a team order. So red, blue, or blue, red, depending on who wins, whatever the situation is going to be to decide who goes first, be it coin flip, karaoke contest, arm wrestle. That's up to you. However you decide who goes first, that's up to you. As long as it's standard across your league, right? That's all that matters. Each member, so a member is a character. I called them member for some reason, so we'll stick with that. Each member has 1 turn per round. Okay, so when it's your turn, you've got 5 members on your team you can choose from, right? I'm going to stick with 3 for now, so I just have to do A, B, C. A goes first on red, then blue. Blue decides to use B. Their B, not your B, right? Comes back to you, red. You can't use A again because they've already gone, so you can use B or C, whichever one you want to use, right? And again, that's all going to be kind of part of the reaction of where the ball is, who makes the most sense to go now. Am I looking to go on the attack? Am I looking to try and to defend? And again, because there's one goal, defense and attack kind of mesh in together. But anyway, I think that makes sense. Okay. And again, I've said it here. So members do not need to be played in any order, but can only be played once per round. Okay. So a turn consists of 1 times basic movement. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but basic movement is going to be a sprint, dribble. Again, it's considered that the ball always ends. We're not going to go into the ball because there's a section for the ball. God, I'm very bad at this. It is considered that this is much more of a kicking the ball kind of game than it is a throwing the ball kind of game. However, both are viable, but the ball always ends up on the ground. So it's not like Blood Bowl or American football where you're going to end your turn holding the ball, right? If your turn ends and you're holding the ball, you're going to drop it because it has to end up on the ground. But anyway, 2 times actions. So that's going to be where you're going to be able to spend your dice. Now, I have been playing around with this idea for a while, and I think I'm not going to go into it. Do you know what? When I do the members and actions video, we'll go into it there. But just to kind of give you a brief idea of where I'm going, you would have more than 2 actions that you could possibly do, and you can pick. I've kind of been playing around with the idea that you would have a number of dice you can use and commit to certain actions to try and get the better roll, right? What I haven't quite worked out is what a better roll would mean and how I would want to carry forward. And I don't think I can really visualize that until I'm kind of thinking about more in-depth specific rules, which I haven't really got to yet. I've kind of just getting to the basics, right? And you would then have a number of react points. Okay. So this is another bone of contention that everyone I've talked to is going to go, what? So I am going to try and demonstrate what I mean when I say react points by using some models here, right? The other thing to remember, and we haven't got to the ball yet, is that the ball, there's only one ball, there's only one goal. The goal is awarded to the color of the ball as when it goes into the goal, right? So you could say the scorer or the scorer, yes, but not necessarily the shooter. And again, this comes out to react points. So let's say, for example, imagine he's the blue team, okay? So this guy here has come here and he's passed the ball. He's used one of his actions and he's passing the ball and he's going to pass it to this guy over here, right? As soon as it reaches here, it's not this guy's turn, right? But he's got some react points, right? You can have up to 5, hence react, R-E-A-C-T. He's got some react points and he was within range for one of his react actions to try and intercept the ball, right? That would involve dice rolls, right? And however we're going to work that, whether it's a fight against this guy and you do dice v dice or whatever, I don't know yet. But that is kind of what the react point is for. So you don't have to go into like an Overwatch mode like a lot of games like this do. Like you think like XCOM, you go into Overwatch. So if you see somebody run, you can peek up and shoot. No, every character would have a react point, and they would also have a react range, right? So like if this guy was over here and they tried to do this pass ball shot, I just realized the second guy wasn't within view because he was behind my face. Right? There's no way he can react to that, at least physically react to that, right? To try and get to this ball. Right? Because that just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, he may try the pass and he may fail the pass, so the ball may end up halfway in between. Again, I don't know how how you would roll the dice and how you would say that's a pass and that's a fail. I'm not quite there yet. But you could try the pass, it fails, ends up there. You could then say it's his next turn, so he may then try and sprint and get the ball, but that's a completely different thing. That's not a react point. But if he was here to begin with, and this is within his react range, then he can try and react and intercept the ball, right? Now, if he's only got the one react point, all he can do is try and intercept, right? So he's either going to try and stand here and stop it, right? Or he's going to come in here and intercept it. And again, there's going to be all kind of dice rolls, a little bit of randomness on this. Or he could miss. He might fall over as he tries to run. All these kind of things. But if he touches it, that ball would then go blue. He's team blue, so this is now a blue ball, right? And let's just say, this shouldn't be possible, but let's just say out of some kind of complete random luck, because of this interception, the ball goes flying off. I haven't got it flying, so I can't take it over the roof. Over the roof, into the goal, right? That is a blue goal because as soon as he touched the ball, it went blue. Come on, I got you in there. Surely I can get you out. There, I've opened the door. But that's kind of what React is for. And I am having trouble with React and when you would be able to use it, how you would be able to use it, and if there's going to be a snowball effect of React. Now, what I mean by that is, so he reacts and he stops the ball, right? You could then say, well, then you're now in his React range. So can he then come and try and get it back as a React point? I would say no at that stage, right? The only way he can try and get this ball back is it's going to be his turn, right? But this guy has just reacted. And if you haven't used him already in that round, he now has the ball and he can take his turn next, right? Because he's got it, right? You may not want him to take his turn next. He might be someone who's a very good defender. So anyone who's going to try and tackle this off him has got to get some very high rolls. I don't know. But no, the react points are to try and to be a way that every member on the board can kind of react to things that are going on, but only a limited number of times and to a limited degree, right? So if he reacts here and he spends his react points, he cannot react again, right? Because if he did react and he managed to get control of the ball, which, by the way, I think you would have to spend 2 react points on. 1 for the initial interception and 2 for the trying to control the ball and actually take it as your own. But let's say he's done that. What was my point? Okay, so 2 things. So let's say all he managed to do was kind of intercept and stop the ball, right? Does that necessarily mean he automatically has a sphere of control over that ball? I don't think so, right? So right now he's facing backwards. He's got no react points. This guy can come over, take the ball, and go away with it, right? And this guy can do nothing about it because he's used his react points, right? Whereas if he's used 2, managed to intercept and then control it, I would then say he does have control over the ball. So then this guy tries to intercept it. Okay, there's nothing he can do action point-wise, but he does put a little bit of difficulty on trying to get the ball, right? And I think this is how the dice rolls are going to work. But I think react points are going to become very important. You know, 1, you may have a guy over by the goal, right? Ball looks like it's going to go in. Guy's going to try and react to save it. May miss, may fail, may knock the ball off a wall, off the roof, into the goal, somehow manages to score, and that works for him, right? Because he would have physically touched it. So now I want to kind of go into the idea of, so why do I say physical touch all the time for when it changes color? Because it is not out of the realm of feasibility that this guy here could have a very long-range react action, right? Let's say it's Robin Hood. You've taken Robin Hood on your team, right? He's going to bring his bow and arrow, right? Because that just makes sense. He's going to bring his bow and arrow. So if he sees the ball is about to go into the goal and he's got clear line of sight, he's probably, if he's got react points left, and again, I think you would say this react would you need to spend quite a few of the react points on, right? He's probably going to try and fire his bow at the ball, right? To try and change its trajectory. The arrow may hit the ball, but he hasn't physically touched it, so it would still be red. So if he did somehow manage to shoot the arrow into the ball and it still went into the goal, that's still a red goal, right? Because he hasn't physically touched the ball. Again, whether any of these rules make it into the final thing, I don't know. We'll just move along. But anyway, a turn continues if the member has action / movement left after a goal is scored. Again, this is important. So in Blood Bowl, if I remember correctly, it's been a long time. If you stumble with a pickup or you fall over, your turn ends, right? But the way Blood Bowl does it is it's your turn, you move all your members. It's then the opposing side's turn, they move all of theirs, right? That's not how we're doing it here. It's red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. But let's say this guy rushes to the ball, right? That's his movement. Kicks the ball, goes in, right? He's still got an action left. There are still things he can do. The ball is going to reappear on one of the, which I don't actually have on this scene, on one of the many, the ball can basically reappear anywhere, I think. Right, ball goes in, goal is scored, ball reappears. He's still got some actions left, right? So he may not have his free movement left because he used to get in, but he may have some movement-based actions he can use. So he may then try to sprint over here to, again, just to become a little bit of a problem, right? Little bit of a nuisance, possibly in the way of any kind of passing attempt. You know, because again, if this guy is here and he wants to try and pass to this guy, well, if he does it here, there's a good chance, 1, that he might react, and 2, the ball might just hit him on the way through, right? Again, how the ball works and how the dice rolls are going to work for the ball, I'm not quite there yet, but that's kind of where we are. The round continues after a goal is scored, which again, I think makes sense. I don't think I really need to state that twice. But just because a goal is scored does not mean you go to the next round, right? The round continues. So if you've only had 1 red, blue, right? It then goes to red. He's still got members left. You continue the round. You carry on trying to score. A goal is scored by getting the ball in the net. I think I've covered that already. So ball goes in there. You've scored. A goal is worth 1 point. Again, I think I've also covered that when we were going on about the stadium stuff, and how you would design the goals to kind of help you. Now, again, part of how you can kind of get the use these things to your advantage, right? So again, the Angels are meant to be very good at getting height and flying and getting the ball high, right? So getting over this wall for them is not a problem, right? But what we've also had to do, you know, for everybody else, is we put this walkway in. So again, it means that the blue team can also get up high, but they're going to be on this walkway, which should be very easy for the Angels to block and guard and cause trouble on. But the other thing we've put in is these doors, right? Now you could say, and again, I think this all comes down to how are you going to spend your points, right? And how am I going to do the shopping list of how you can spend your points to do all this kind of stuff, right? So you could say that somebody has to rush here to open this door, use an action to open it. God, if only I could find the place to click on them really easily every time, right? And then someone else can go. Or you could say they're magic doors which open automatically on a set rotation, right? But only the person who's designed the stadium would know that set rotation. Now, you would have to write it down so you could prove at the end that, you know, it was true. Or there'd have to be some kind of system where you kind of can put it in hidden, but then you can kind of slide, you know they're automatic doors, the magic doors, and you can kind of like just slide up which one's going to open. There has to be somewhere that you can prove to the opposing player that the way you decided the doors open automatically was in fact true, and you weren't just conveniently always next to the door as it opened. But the whole point is you should be conveniently next to the door when it opens because you know that, right? Whereas the opposing player doesn't. And trying to do fake outs based on that, and all kind of that, and where I'm going to be, and I'm trying to play to my opponent. Is he going to try and lead me to the wrong door and then quickly pass it around somehow? What other abilities does the team have? This is where the kind of tactics of the game is going to come in. Again, building abilities, building teams is going to take a long time. I kind of feel if I can get the basics right, and if it feels fun-ish, just to knock the ball around and try and get it into a goal for an hour with 5 people, we then add the tactics and the madness on top, and it should only get better. Madness and randomness, I do want that to be part of the game. I really do. How I build that in, I don't know. How you build that in when it's dice rolls, I also don't know. But I do want that to be part of the thing. And again, there's much more I want people to be able to do with stadiums, but I'll do a much more in-depth video on stadiums at a later date. I think we've covered most of the ball stuff. There's usually only one ball in play at a time. Usually. There may be things that kick off a multi-ball. Or there may not. The ball takes on the color of the last team member to physically touch it. Again, we've covered that a little bit. Can be kicked, picked up and thrown. Must be on the ground at the end of every member's round. I said round. I meant turn. Did I mean turn? Yes, I did mean turn. I meant turn there, not round. Because again, because the Angels fly, they are based around flying, and I think I probably would base them around throwing and catching. But the interesting part of that is what I'm saying is that the ball must be on the ground at the end of everybody's turn. So if you're playing a team that throws and catches, that becomes very complicated and almost impossible to do. So how would I get around that? The answer is right now, I don't know. Now, what you could say, because I said this at the end of the members' turn. I know I used round. I'll correct the post on Patreon. I bet I don't do that. I think the way around that is, okay, so it picks up the ball, one action, throws the ball for a second action, right? The ball then goes over here. This guy may try and react to intercept the pass. The ball ends up over here, right? I think this person will then have to react to catch it, right? And if they don't have any react points, the ball basically just goes to them, hits them on the face, and then bounces off in a random direction and lands somewhere on the ground. Whereas if they've got a react, and again, it's your team, you should know if they've got react points to try and catch. They can then catch it, right? Because it's not technically their turn, they can keep hold of the ball, right? So he throws it, they catch, they've got the ball. So then on my turn, if I want to try and get the ball off this guy, I'm going to have to physically tackle him, right? And this is going to be true as well for if people have got control of the ball when it's by their feet as well. It's just the game intends for the ball to be on the floor, so it might be slightly easier to be able to kind of put control on it with your feet than it is to catch. And again, because I think if you've got hold of the ball, someone is physically going to have to tackle you down, American football style. But obviously, if the ball is on the floor like this, I can just kind of come in and try and tackle it from you in a kind of more British football, soccer kind of way, right? However I want to do that. And again, if you've got a team of moles who dig, then you may want to try and come underneath and get the ball to go on the ground and move it that way, right? Again, these are all the kind of things that I'm hoping this game will allow. A match is won by the team with the most goals and is worth an extra 3 points. Is lost by the team with the least goals and is worth an extra 1 point. And is drawn if both teams had the same goals and is worth 2 extra points per team, right? And like I've said, a goal is worth a point at the end of the day. So if you've scored 1 goal and you win, you end up with 4 points. And the league goes on. A game is won based on the total points after the 2 matches. So I think I've covered most of what I want to do, talk about here. I think that there are a number of key aspects, right? Basically, we don't have a game yet. I don't know what dice we're using. I don't know when you would roll. I don't know if you use an action, if it just works, or if you also have to roll to do an action, right? I don't know if there's going to be a kind of range for the rolls in the actions, right? One of the things I remember from Blood Bowl, and again, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but one of the things I think I remember from Blood Bowl is this kind of, you can run kind of safely and then you can push it, which is dice rolls, right? And I think having that kind of idea of kind of being able to push it if you want, probably not the basic movement. I think the basic movements we would try and keep incredibly basic, but if you did have a sprint, or if you did have a kick, you know, they'd kind of be like, there's a safe range of how far you can kick or pass the ball, right? Then you're pushing it. So the dice roll becomes harder, right? Some of the times I think you are going to be rolling against the other team, right? So if you are tackling, you're probably going to end up rolling against that other, red team member against blue team member, and highest roll wins, right? But a lot of the time, I don't think that logic makes sense for the game. You know, if I'm just kicking the ball, why would I have to roll against another team member, right? Tackling the ball, sure, because you're both involved in an action, but just kicking it, passing it, and there's no one around me, well, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I do want there to be some dice rolls on there to increase the chance of randomness. And then there's also, how do I want the ball to react? And this, how I want the ball to react, is keeping me up at night at times. as I'm thinking about it. You know, is terrain a thing? Okay, so we would say that the field is probably pretty good, smooth terrain. So the ball will probably go where you want it to go. But this bridge, if you try to pass this thing along the bridge, it's clearly made out of wood. It's got ropes. It's going to have high bits and low bits. It's going to be uneven. You know, the ball suddenly hits a random thing, goes off in a direction you're not expecting. How do you roll for that? And how do you roll for that in a way that doesn't feel completely random, like you've robbed a player of all agency, but in a way that's also kind of like, okay, so I know if I pass it 10 yards, I don't know why I'm using yards, if I pass it 1 square, that's going to go exactly where I want it to go. Okay, that's a pretty short thing for a pass, I think. Again, ranges all the kind of things are going to come into question. Again, trying to get to that hour match mark, right? But anyway, you know, so I can pass it 1 square, no problem. If I want to pass it 2, I've got to do a roll. What's that roll going to be? If I want to pass it 3, and 3 is probably the max I can do unless I've upped my character somehow, my member, then it's going to be more dice rolls, right? And basically, as soon as I fail a dice roll, the ball is then free to carry on doing what it wants to do. So then how and who rolls for the ball and where it ends up, right? And how many dice rolls do you want to do in a given game? And so there's a lot of questions about how this game is going to work. But I do kind of want to get the kind of basics out there, the kind of idea around it, and kind of the kind of basic principles, which is I like the idea of the stadium becoming part of your tactics. So making your own stadium, I think, is going to be an important part of the game, and one I don't necessarily want to lose. It would simplify it to lose that aspect, but to me, I think that could be a very interesting part of the game. You know, when you're going into your league, you're going to build your stadium at the start, right? I also think it's very important that the stadiums, I'm not going to go too far into this, I just want to get this idea out there. Should stadiums be destructible or just changeable, right? And what I mean by that is, should this team, let's say this is the red stadium, should blue team be able to try and destroy this wall if they've got the actions and the abilities to do so? Or could they only try and build a ramp up to try and get into the goal? I think transformative is better than destructive, I think, because that can come in a number of ways depending on who you're bringing in as part of your team, right? So again, we've already talked of Robin Hood, but let's say you bring in, I don't know, Merlin, any kind of wizard, right? Let's say you bring in someone who's got portal technology, right? They'd be able to come up here on the top, put a portal on this wall, and then do, you know, the portal on this wall, and they can get in and score, right? Good point, me. One thing that I do need to remember about goals is that whenever a goal is scored, the stadium is reset. Yeah, I like that. I like that. But I have to stop thinking out loud because I think this video has gone on way too long. So I want to try and get a concise kind of guiding mantra. 1, this is a game where you're meant to always be on the attack. You want to score as many goals as possible. You do not want to turtle around the ball and defend, right? So how you encourage that and kind of make that the default play style has to be built into the rules, right? May even be built into the ball itself. You know, maybe it self-destructs after a certain amount of time if it hasn't moved X number of squares. I don't know. Always want to be on the attack. I like the idea of stadiums and designing your own stadiums. It's meant to be a very attack-focused game, very hectic, very frantic, quite a lot of dice rolling, even if I don't know how that's going to work yet. I think the react system is going to be important for being able to react. That's why I called it the react system, because I played a rough version of this by myself a while ago, and kind of just standing by and watching things happen to me wasn't a fun experience. But I'll be interested to see how other people feel about the kind of being able to react to what is going on idea. Yeah, I think the next video I will probably do, and the next kind of set of rules I will probably try and, I'm not going to say finalize, but the start is going to be the stadium. I think trying to get the stadiums down is going to be important, and what you can and can't do as part of a stadium. And then it's going to have to be members. Kind of basic rules. What dice are we going to use? When do you roll? How do you roll? What's good? What's bad? And why is it important that, at least in my mind, why is it important? I'm not going to tell you why, but why is it important that whatever dice I use also is the maximum number of players you can have on a roster at any given time? Those are questions to be answered in a future video. Also, we need to give this game a name other than SportsBall Game. Although I kind of like SportsBall Game. It's growing on me. But anyway. hopefully you enjoyed this kind of thinking out loud about a new kind of game. Again, this is leading into Cakeverse Adventures. This is one of the many ways I want to be able to generate stories, content, to then go into Cakeverse Adventures. And I want to elaborate on that and stretch that as much as possible. The whole point of Cakeverse, the Cakeverse Reborn, is that a lot of the content is generated live before it's then kind of turned into something else or presented in a different form. And the kind of SportsBall Game is kind of the first iteration of trying to do that and accomplish that. But yes, if you made it through this, thank you very much. If you've got any comments, thoughts, suggestions, please leave them down below. I'd very much appreciate it. I will try and get a link over to the Patreon post with the basic statements if anybody wants to read them. Bear in mind that I already know some of them are wrong, just based on what we've gone through in this video. So it's good to think out loud. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you all when I see you all. Bye for now.